What's up everyone, MK Tom Brady here. This video I want to talk about some really refreshing comments that went out over the weekend about Mortal Kombat 11. You don't normally hear this type of talk from players at this level, so this was really refreshing to see. It all started when Dragon did a matchup chart for Cetrion to kick the weekend off. And this got a lot of players' attention, and Scar tweeted out about what a lot of people were already commenting on and already tweeting for a few days before this tweet went out. He says, according to Dragon's Cetrion tier list, she has no losing matchups. And I'm sure the community agrees, which he's right here. A lot of the community agreed with this tweet here, and they were tweeting stuff like this out even before Scar made this tweet himself. He then tags Paulo Garcia, who's one of the lead designers at NetherRealm, at Paco Steven, and then goes on to tag NetherRealm Studios themselves at NetherRealm, and finishes off with "the ball is in your court." And what is he actually saying here? What he's saying here is, hey NetherRealm, you know this sanctuary of balance that you were trying to achieve? Guess what, boys? Here we go again. Another one of your games in which one or more characters doesn't lose a single matchup. How can you not get this right? Like, how do you keep getting this wrong? Even when you try to not do this, you do it anyway. What are you going to do about it? We're all watching the balls in your court. And that's basically what he's saying here. Well, Dragon, he had a couple of days to think about his matchup chart. And he then made the following tweet, which really, this is more honest here. This is more truthful. Because a lot of times when there are matchup charts, what happens is you'll see one guy's chart where perhaps they overvalue their skill as a player, where they don't really take into account how good they are at the game. Then you have other matchup charts where somebody says, there's no way that guy was that much better than me. It's got to be the character. And this is where we get skewed matchup charts and matchup charts that don't line up. So Dragon says, I made a Cetrion matchup chart with no losing matchups, but I might have overvalued my skill a little bit too. So again, here's the overvalue. He's saying, look, there might be a matchup here or there that she loses, but I didn't really put much stock in my ability to play the game. I just basically said, she probably wins this matchup, and didn't think, you know what, maybe she loses and I just outplayed the guy here. Or maybe she goes even with or barely wins and I have it as heavy advantage Cetrion, but maybe I was just playing really well. And I didn't take that into consideration enough when making my matchup chart, is what he's basically saying. And likewise, there are people who don't take that into consideration at all. They say, you know what, there was no way it was the player, it was the character when they do their matchup chart. So the real truth is somewhere in between the overvalue and the undervalue. So I think Dragon really hit this spot on. It's 100% possible she loses to Kotal and Raiden. Now, he's not saying she does lose to them because we know how the MK community is. If it turns out she doesn't, there's always someone out there that's going to say, oh, sure, Dragon, sure she loses to those characters. More downplay here, boys. So what he's basically saying here is she probably does lose to one or two characters here or there. It may not have to be these two specific characters, but he's acknowledging it's highly possible she actually does lose, a few matchups, at least one or two. And then he talks about the truth here. She still does have some weakness. She doesn't have a 7-frame button, no high damage, so her damage output is on the lower side. People that are saying she has no weaknesses are capping. So if you're just saying she's a perfect character, no weakness, no flaw, that's just not true. He then followed up this tweet with, I know this sounds like downplay, but I'm just being honest. I still think she's one of the best, if not the best in the game. So he's acknowledging, hey, look, no matter what, I'm not straying away from the fact that she's probably the best character in the game. And if she's not number one, she's probably number 2, 3 at the worst, right? He's not acknowledging how strong she is compared to the rest of the cast here. He says, but to say she has no counterplay, no weaknesses, is just wrong. And then talks about, hey, should something get touched here? Says if they nerf anything, they should only slightly touch Tornado and increase teleport recovery. I don't really think much of this needs to get done, if any of it at all. Maybe a slight touch, but really, I don't really think there's much that has to be done here. And Sonic tweets out, I think she loses to Cassie and Devora. What they're basically saying here, it doesn't matter which one or the other. The fact is, she probably does lose a matchup here or there. At least 2 matchups, maybe 3. I don't think any more than 2 or 3. So reality is, she probably beats most of the characters, the majority of the cast. Goes even with a few, even loses to 1 or 2 of them. But throughout all of this, she does have weakness to exploit. She does have stuff to counterplay around. So even if someone says, well, 2 losing matchups, still in all, she does have stuff to counterplay around. But I really also want to segue into this right here, because this also is a big deal for me, because this is someone who loves the game. Burrito Voorhees here. I've known him since he was 9 years old. He went to a tournament at 9. His brother is forever king, and he's been competing ever since the age of 9 years old, going to tournaments. So that just tells you how much love he has for the game. He says, I decided to wait until after my run in Black's Pyramid of Power tournament to say this, but I've had these thoughts about MK11 for so long. I'm done competing in this game. I may play in exhibitions here and there, but tournaments I'm done with. I've been playing this game just because it's getting supported by the community, in which, in my opinion, if it wasn't for the community, this game would be a barren wasteland, and I apologize if that's negative. The game is not fun at all to compete in, and is so stressful. I've never gotten so frustrated playing a game in my life until MK11. I'm not alone when I say that either. People have shared their thoughts or said their piece on the game before, including several top players. I was only competing solely for the money. I wasn't playing out of enjoyment. After doing this so long over time, I realized I don't have to do this anymore, and I'm finally choosing to not compete. Don't get me wrong. I can easily see this game's potential being unlocked, but it would take work on NRS's part, and they are the ones to decide whether they will unlock that potential or not. So basically saying, hey, look, we see the potential, but it's up to them to unlock it. I love discussing about the game, and I'm always down to give suggestions on how to change the game for the better among other people. I do want this game to be better, so it's not so stressful to compete in, but again, that's NRS's decision. Before I finish here, let me just say, what he's saying is a lot of what we feel. The truth is, it's not that we don't want to play the game. If this game was actually garbage and there was no potential, nobody would care. We wouldn't be constantly debating issues about the game. We wouldn't constantly be talking about the game or streaming the game or making content for the game. We would just move on to something else because there's no way to save this game. It's the fact that we see how good it can be. We see the potential right there. And it's so frustrating to see so much potential never realized because the game studio, for one reason or another, doesn't allow the game to reach that potential that is right there in front of all our faces. Burrito goes on by saying, I'll definitely miss playing Geras and Xiao in tournament, but I can't keep stressing myself out. I hope everyone understands why I'm choosing to not compete anymore and where I'm coming from about the state of MK11 and why it's driving me away from competing. So let me just sum this all up in a nutshell. For one, these 2 things, what Dragon said, what Burrito said, what Scar said, what the people have been talking about this, all kind of go hand in hand. It's not a Cetrion issue or a Jackie issue or a Fujin issue or whatever other character you think is top and needs to be nerfed because they only lose 1 or 2 matchups and beat most of the cast or whatever it is. The fact of the matter is, it's about fun and enjoyment. See, the problem was never these overpowered characters because none of these top characters are actually overpowered. Nothing they have is anywhere near as strong as anything we've seen in other MK games. This is an acceptable power level. In reality, we want characters to be like Cetrion, like Jackie, like Fujin, like whatever other character you guys have in the top. That's what we want. We may not want unblockable stomps like Shiva, and that's obviously something that should be looked at and redesigned, but we want the power level of these characters so that we don't want an artificial, well, here's how you match their power level. Just have an unblockable stomp to compete at that level. We don't want characters to have an artificial balancing tool, but we also don't want characters to be plain. So the real issue here is that these top characters, they use all the system's mechanics to their fullest. They use the custom variation system with default moves and one-slot moves, and they use the meter system, able to use all 4 of their bars to do things, be it teleport cancels and doing moves in the air, or pressure using offensive and defensive bar like Jackie and Fujin. Whatever it is, armor breaks, restands, ways around the wake-up system, ways to deal with the breakaway system, all type of ways, to deal with all the mechanics in the game. And then there are characters, their own neutral breaking mechanics, neutral within the neutral breaking mechanic. This is all fine. The problem isn't that these characters are over the top and should be toned down because, to Burrito's point, he likes Shao Kahn. If they did Dragon's changes to Cetrion tomorrow, that doesn't make the Shao Kahn player want to come on the game and say, wow, I can't wait to do more sweeps and more down ones and throws. It's that 99.9% of this game is characters doing the basics outside of a few characters at the top, the better characters, who are better because they have their own stuff, their own meta. It's not just strike, throw. Look, I'm a Sub-Zero player. He's a top character in the game. And it's so boring to me because while he's good, being good because of overhead low or strike throw is boring. Sure, if you're a Shiva player, there's no doubt she is ridiculous. But there's also no doubt it gets boring doing down, up over and over and over again because that's the only way she can compete. Nobody wants to do that even if it means they're winning. It's boring, right? So either there's characters that are good for the wrong reasons, such a simple design that's so boring, or characters just can't do anything but down 1, down 3, down 4, sweep and throw. That's the real problem of the boredom. And then, more on the frustration, because these characters don't have ways to deal with this kind of stuff, they're always dealing with the wake-up system to its fullest. There's no whatever. They're just stuck dealing with it. And the breakaway and all the other stuff, the fatal blow mechanics, just all this stuff in the game that would probably take an overhaul to raise characters up to be able to deal with these things better and tweak some of these mechanics to be a little more competition friendly. And we all see this potential. But this is an overhaul. To take Shao Kahn up to Cetrion is an overhaul. Or take him up to Jackie or Fujin, that is an overhaul. To take Shiva and make her a good character without stomp, stomp, stomp is an overhaul. Period. And people are just losing faith that there is going to be one. Like, period. People, is like Scar said, hey, NetherRealm, the ball is in your court to do something. The game is right here. The game is right here to do something about. What are you going to do about it? The ball's in your court. But let me know what all you guys think in the comments below. How do you really feel about MK11? Do you think an overhaul is needed? Do you think NRS will actually do this overhaul? Or do you think all we'll get is a combat pack and they're done with the game and they're on to the next title? I'm always curious to hear what you guys have to think or say in the comments below. I want to thank you all so much for supporting all my content as usual, and stay tuned for future content. Thanks for watching, everybody.